So I don't have a question.
Stuart, it's Soren.
So,
Can you can you speak about ego and what is inner strength and what is the ego acting out?
inner strength comes with humility. It comes with deference to other people. It comes with love. It comes with compassion. Ego is a way of just kicking your way through the world. You are more important than everybody else, and you have a certain charismatic ability that enables you to step all over people, and nobody can get in your way. So there's a very big difference. Real inner strength is really based on humility, being humble, listening to other people, learning from them, letting life be the teacher. People with huge egos, it's almost impossible to teach them anything. They know everything. So there's a very big difference. And yet it's just a transformation. You can't have all the things I mentioned unless your heart is open, unless you can sustain the openness of heart. As soon as the heart closes, we resort to ego, to image of self, self-importance, who we are, what we are. Nobody's going to say anything to put us down. We're going to fight our way. It's all bullshit, you know? And when your heart is open, like I'm talking about, nobody can put you down. Doesn't matter what they say, what they do, what they think. It absolutely has no effect on your connection with God. And then you just forgive them, move on in your life, without getting into battles about who's right and wrong and ego and this. So there's a very big difference. That takes tremendous inner strength, what I'm talking about. You have to have a highly developed chakra system. You have to have a connection with spirit. You have to be nurtured by that connection. You have to have chi. And chi alone is not enough. You need chi with an open heart. There's a lot of people with huge egos have a lot of chi, and they're very powerful. I mean, so you look in the political realm, you look in the entertainment business, the kind of people you have to, deal with there. It's a lot of energy, a lot of intellect, a lot of chi, very little heart. I hope that's clear. Does anyone else have a question? I mean, look, we're taught from the earliest age that we've got to make something of ourselves. We have to, have the ambition, the strength inside to succeed in the world. We're taught this from the earliest age, and it always manifests as ego, as people stepping over each other, people doing damage to each other, wars that go on. I mean, nobody teaches people from the earliest age that the greatest strength you can have is love, real love, unconditional love. Does anyone else have a question?
Stuart, I have a question, Bob Sink.
Yes, Bob?
So when I am faced with somebody with a large ego, how best for me to respond?
I think the best way I've learned is keep your mouth shut. I mean it. Because as soon as you open your mouth, they have to be better than you. And there's just going to be a war. Listen to them. Maybe you learn something from somebody with a huge ego and not be intimidated by them. That requires inner strength to just listen and not be intimidated by somebody else's ego, by somebody else's need to be all powerful, you know? And I think that's an extraordinary way of dealing with it. Just listen to them. Learn something. Learn what not to do in life. If you learn anything, what not to do, how not to treat other human beings. And then eventually, I've discovered people like that usually exhaust themselves. If you don't feed their ego, if you don't feed their, need to be powerful and all that, and you don't battle with them and fight, they eventually just drain all of that tension. It's mostly just tension, and they just drain it out of them, just drains out of them. And then maybe you can say something to them. Now, I know this is not an easy thing to do, and I know that all of us are confronted with people like this in life. I mean, it took me years to say, what does it matter? Somebody else doesn't like what I do. Who cares? Somebody else wants to be more powerful than me. I don't have to compete with anybody. And that really is indicative of being connected to spirit. Because when you have that connection, there's no competition. You don't have to compete with anybody. You usually do something that's so unique in life that there's no way that anybody can compete with you. I mean, when I was younger doing this, I had so many of these gurus and people competing with me. It used to make me crazy when I was younger. People that do Rudy's work were competing with me. And I was like, what? Then finally I just said, what does it matter? It's their bullshit, Why should I allow their need, to compete and prove themselves to ever interfere with my connection with God, Spirit? And when that finally became part of my inner life, people, it became such an enormous relief from having to deal with all that stuff I dealt with when I was younger. It's a very great blessing to build a chakra system that's strong enough to do what I'm talking about. It is the essence of this meditation. It is what we try to do here in all these classes. I mean, it just enables us to function like human beings instead of having to be better than everybody else. But one day we all die. What does it all matter? What does it come down to? Who is better? Becomes a figment in somebody else's memory and they never remember it properly. Does anyone else have a question?
Thank you, Stuart.
You're welcome. I mean, there was a time I had to put up with somebody. 40 years I had this person competing with me until finally I said, enough. I don't need this anymore. I said, no more. Finished. Competition is over. Go do your life. Leave me alone. I don't need this anymore. Does anyone else have a question? You know, years ago, something really funny. I always used to keep people around, these one or two people around me, you know, who were impossible for me to be around. And I would do it intentionally. I would just always have somebody like that come into my gallery. They would hang out. They would be students of mine. Their chemistry was so difficult for me. And I used to keep them around me because I knew if I could learn to hug this person with an open heart and with love inside me, it means that my growth has been extraordinary. And it worked. It really worked. It forced me to learn how to deal with the impossible by just having people around me that were impossible for me. They other people they weren't, but for me they were very difficult people. And I learned how to open to these people and to love them and to let them be students of mine and teach them whatever I can possibly teach them.
So when they would trigger you, what would you do?
I would get centered in my navel chakra and say to myself, what does it matter? You know? Or I would sit down and have a meditation class with them. And all of that would disappear in seconds. And I developed a kind of, you know, it's almost crazy, a kind of a gratitude to those people because their presence really forced me to grow. They really forced me to grow. Instead of complaining and bitching about them, I try to get more open and more developed. And I used to hear Rudy talk about this all the time. And I would be working in bars and, you know, people were really kind of nutso in those places. And I had to learn how to let go. I told you that classic story of my life where I used to be a bartender who I couldn't go ask. I was a waiter and I said, give me a whiskey sour and we would have a fight. Every night it was the same way. Until one day I'm standing at the bar and he's talking about meeting his girlfriend for a midnight breakfast. And I was so taken with that. I said, this girlfriend of his must be a total saint. The ability to not only go have breakfast with him at midnight, but to sleep with him, to go home with him, to be in a romantic relationship. And I said, this is extraordinary. I mean, I'd love to meet her, to find out what kind of being she is, you know? It changed me hearing that conversation. I never had a fight with that guy again, ever. Something in me changed, got big enough to be able to say, this man is a human being. He has a girlfriend who loves him. You don't have to, you know, get romantically involved with him, but you just let him be. He's got problems. Everybody's got problems. And you ever meet anybody who doesn't have problems? So it became, you know, a teacher for me. Instead of being an enemy and somebody I would fight with and argue with, he became really an incredible teacher for me, that guy. Does anyone else have a question they would like? Sorry, I repeated that story 100 times, but it's really a great story, you know? Does anyone else have a question? Okay, well, God bless you all. There'll be a meditation tomorrow evening at 7:30 my time. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody. Thank you. Thank you for being here, being part of this, enabling me to grow spiritually, to serve God. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Good night.
Thank you, Stuart. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.